For some of you may not know, I'm actually a neurosurgeon at Stanford, and that's my day job. But oftentimes people ask, how does a neurosurgeon become interested in compassion and altruism? And I'll tell you very briefly, and the reason I'm telling you this is to put into context the power of interventions. I grew up in poverty. My family was on public assistance my entire life. Neither of my parents went to college. My father was an alcoholic, and my mother was an invalid. And in that environment, as Paul Gilbert alluded to, it is so hard to overcome the issues that are alive in that type of an environment and that stop people from achieving their potential. But what extraordinarily happened to me, believe it or not, was I walked into a magic shop and there was a woman there who was not the owner, but the owner's mother. And after speaking with me for about 10 or 15 minutes, she said to me, "I will teach you something that I think could change your life." And what she taught me over a 6-week period, about 2 hours a day, was training in mindfulness and also visualization techniques, interspersed with the power of positive thinking and some self-hypnosis. And what that training allowed me to do was to go from a perception of having no possibilities to having unlimited possibilities. And that is the power that each of us hold in our hand. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is the center that has been established at Stanford University. And this center was established after I returned to Stanford after being away for a period of time. And I started having very casual conversations with scientists because I was very interested in this topic. Why do people have capacity in terms of finance or position to help others and don't? And why is it that people have so little, oftentimes give everything? So we started these simple explorations, and ultimately this led to a meeting with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And during this conversation, we were talking about this because I was interested in him coming to Stanford. And he immediately agreed to this, and then he began an animated conversation with his translator, although he speaks perfect English, of course. And at the end of it, His Holiness said, or his translator said, "Jim, His Holiness so believes in this work, he wants to make a personal donation." Now imagine how guilty I felt taking the Dalai Lama's money. But I did take it. I want you to know. And this allowed us the establishment of this center. Now we've all heard in these conversations the neuroscience behind this, if you will, how the brain is affected. And that is all wonderful. And in fact, our center is focused on rigorous science to really understand the mechanisms that cause individuals to be compassionate. But from my own sense, all of that's completely worthless, because what is it that counts at the end of the day? Where does the rubber hit the road? And that is with the ability to change people's lives, to take this work and to have it have an impact on human beings. And that's what I'm very interested in. So we have created a number of interventions of which we are testing them in terms of their robustness, their longevity, their impact. And what I'd like to introduce you today is one of our postdoctoral fellows who this is really focused on because of this powerful program that he's been engaged with 2 members from our scientific advisory board, Ronnie Berger, who has developed an extraordinary program called Erase Stress, which is used in areas of war zones or disasters to help children overcome the effects of these types of traumas. And this program has been taught to over 50,000 students in numerous countries, over a wide variety of cultures, and has been empirically shown to have impact. This has now been taken another step further from what's called Erase Stress, which is based on mindfulness, which is based on cognitive behavioral therapy, but is now called, the next iteration is Erase Stress Prosocial, which now brings a compassion component to this, and I believe makes it even more powerful. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Yotam Heineberg, who is our postdoctoral student, who has really been at the forefront of this with Ronnie Berger and Phil Zimbardo. And again, thank you for your time.
What an honor it is to be with you here today. Very thankful for this opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Doty. Special thank you to Vincian for helping, and of course all the wonderful people with mind and heart. I'm very appreciative. Healing, compassion, wounded communities, these are big words. I decided to venture by giving you context which is kind of personal, and sharing with you about why this is happening, at least from my perspective. And I'll begin by acknowledging my collaborators, Dr. Philip Zimbardo, who sends his regards from San Francisco, and Dr. Ronnie Berger, who's sitting right there, who's kind of our leader on this project, and I'll give a little bit more context as we move forward. So how did this all come about? I was born in Israel. I was born in the south of Israel, the area that often gets bombarded. We have rockets flying on both sides. I wasn't sure that any of it means anything to me. I had to grow up just a little bit to become very, very aware and concerned about the human experience, wanting to make a contribution. About 7 years ago, I came to Northern California to get my doctorate in clinical psychology. I thought that I would learn how to become a therapist person, ask important questions like, how does that make you feel? And they did teach me how to do that, and I'm very appreciative. More things happened during that time. One thing that happened is that I learned how to care in ways that I never knew that I would be able to. So much so that sometimes it feels like your heart is going to burst. And the topic that I chose to focus on was the cycle of violence, trauma, and aggression. It didn't start with compassion for me. It started with the most rough stuff. I was trying to understand why is it that people that go through such rough experience end up hurting others? So in terms of my clinical work, the healing work that we've done, I work with people that are involved with gangs. I had the honor of working with veterans that came back from war, all these very, very violent folks. And I feel like the most powerful teachers that I've had about the human experience are these people that I had the honor of helping. I'll share a couple lessons. First lesson I'll share is what I've learned is that underneath anger, there's pain. These people were often mandated to come in and get treatment. They don't necessarily want to be there. It was our job to try and help them heal, to reduce their violence so they don't interrupt society. That was part of the message. But really, in connecting with these folks, what we learned is that having empathy and having compassion for what Doty would call the wounds of the heart, these painful experiences that drive our behavior sometimes, that was a very important lesson, having that kind of empathy for what underlines that kind of aggression. A second lesson, I'll share with you the most profound thing that I feel that I've learned about the human experience because of doing this work. When it comes to healing, I think that the most important thing is that people need a hug. So when you try and go in scientific places and talk about people needing a hug, sometimes you want to keep that on the down low because it doesn't sound empirical enough, right? And I need to also express my gratitude to Paul Gilbert, who gave us empirical basis for having these types of conversations. So Paul's work basically shows us that having the capacity for compassion, receiving compassion, giving yourself compassion, all these are measured in his fear of compassion skill. That actually correlates with depression. That correlates with anxiety. The higher your scores are on compassion, the less depressed, the less anxious, the more likely you are to heal. That was very, very useful in working with these folks. Helping them recognize that they have goodness inside of them and see that. Helping them recognize the goodness in others. That was so useful. That recognition has to do with attitudes. They went beyond attitudes. Another thing that we saw is that some of these people we work with are also behaving in altruistic ways. Maybe Irvin Staub would talk about altruism born in suffering. We weren't fully understanding it. Ronnie was very occupied with this issue as well, trying to understand how come these people are being altruistic. They have it so rough. They've already aggressed against other people. What makes them be nice? What makes them be good? And that's what I'm going to focus on, the first portion of this short talk. Let me share with you some questions. Questions that really echo and inform why we do this work. So, why and how would suffering transform into compassion? Why would that happen? How would that happen? What would our world look like if pain turned into this deep desire to help others? I think a little bit better. Some more questions. Why would someone shift from doing bad things into being heroic? How does a human being transform from being a violent person into a compassionate and altruistic individual? And maybe the deepest one, why would it take for us to abandon hatred and choose love instead? We wanted to find out. And I appreciate, again, Ronnie's leadership on these projects. So I'm going to tell you first about the Creating a Partner project. In essence, it started in Israel and the Middle East. Ronnie was interested in trying to understand what makes people shift from violence to peace. So he went out and interviewed former combatants, Israelis and Palestinians, people that had it rough, people that hurt others, people that were traumatized, and for some reason decided to become prosocial, decided to become peaceful, decided to find reconciliation between the two nations. So these are peacemakers, previously hurt people. What we did in the US, and what I had the honor to do, is lead a team of people to find former gangsters, former gang members that are now active as peacemakers that help children avoid the cycle of violence. So my postdoc was very exciting because I got to drive around parts of northern and southern California looking for former gangsters, or are they still gangsters, trying to understand. You got to gauge a little bit, what's going. So there needs to be an assessment in terms of where the person is. Not everybody fit our criteria. This sentence for me captures a lot. Back then, everyone was a potential enemy. Today, everybody can be a potential friend. The person that told me this is a lady in Compton, Los Angeles. She was a Bloods member. She went to jail for murdering her husband. In jail, she became an agent of healing for young females. She was in jail for 15 years. Coming out of jail, she became a prominent person in the domestic violence arena down in Los Angeles, helping reduce the violence, helping kids avoid the cycle of violence. These are the kind of people that we interviewed. These are the kind of people that we've been learning from, trying to understand. Why would someone do that? And can we get more people to do that? So we've been curious about these questions. What are our goals? Why are we doing this? If I had to summarize our group's mission, is that we care a lot about publications as an intermediate platform that would lead us towards doing intervention work that would reach many people. In a couple of minutes, I'll say more about that. So our primary goal is to learn from the wisdom of these people and give that wisdom to children, whether it be in war zones and inner cities, so they can avoid making these mistakes and choose good options for their lives. Another reason, we want to raise public awareness. I don't know, maybe a couple people will be inspired by this kind of work. Maybe they decide to do good things. So in addition to publications, there's also a film that would be released soon. The film is directed by Yoav Shamir and co-produced by Michael Moore. It's called The 10%, and they have been following the work that we have been trying to do, and again, with the hope of sharing that with more people and ideally creating more outlets that would help make society a little bit better. So at this point, I will share a brief trailer with you, and then we will talk a little bit more. So let's see how that goes.
Night, grass, duck, cloth. The answer is duck. 435 volts.
Continue, please.
I'm not getting no answer.
Please continue. The next word is white.
Let's think you should look in on them, please.
Not once we've started the
But
experiment.
what if something's happened and they have an attack or something there?
The experiment requires that we continue. Go on, please.
Don't the man's health mean anything?
Whether the learner likes it or not, we
But he
must...
might be dead in there.
Before Milgram did his study, he described the procedure to 40 psychiatrists, and he asked them individually what percent of all American citizens would go to the N, which was 450 volts. And on the average, they said only 1% would do it, because they said that's sadistic behavior, and only 1% of Americans, or really any population, are sadistic, meaning psychopathic.
White, cloud, horse, rock, house. Answer, please. The answer is horse, 450 volts.
His result was, on the average, it was 2/3, 65%, 67%. I created a kind of Greek drama in which the issue was, what happens when you put good people in an evil place? Does the goodness of the people dominate and transform the evil place? Or does the power of the evil situation transform and dominate the people? We picked 24, 24, who were the most normal and most healthy, and then we randomly assigned half of them to the role of playing a prisoner and half to be the guard. The study was supposed to go for 2 weeks, but we had to end it in 6 days because it was out of control. That the guards were doing each day ever more cruel, sadistic, brutal things. At the end of 5 days, 5 students, all chosen because they're normal and healthy, were having emotional breakdowns in a simulated prison, in a mock prison. What happens when you put good people in an evil place?
15 שנים אני מטפל באנשים שנחשפו לחוויות טראומטיות גם בצד הישראלי וגם בצד הפלסטיני. ורוב האנשים שאני רואה הופכים לקיצוניים יותר, שונאים את האחר ולא מקבלים אותו.
ערבי טוב, רק שהוא מת.
מיעוט אבל עדיין נמצא בכיוון של פיוס. הניסויים של מילגרם וזימברדו התמקדו ברוב שנהג בצורה לא הומנית. מה שמעניין אותי זה המיעוט. אלה שפעלו בצורה הומנית, מהם ניתן ללמוד הרבה.
How are you? Welcome to America. That's nice. Good to see you.
Good place.
Ronnie Berg and I have a similar vision, is that research is step one, so social action step two is how do we create programs that can change the way people think and act in the classroom and in the community, based on not our ideas, but we can say, here's the evidence, and therefore we're telling you, here's what to do, here's how to do it, and we have a reasonable probability that it will change your life in a better way. It's never been done. It's a simple idea, but it's never been done. That's the amazing thing is.
So the power of the situation oftentimes dominates or dictates the ways in which we conduct ourselves. In trying to talk about the fuel that leads that kind of work, the energy that leads that kind of work, the motivation, where does that come from? I will share again a set of questions that I was occupied and sometimes, frankly, maybe haunted by during my first year of grad school. Why would a child, the most innocent being that we can imagine, be intensely angry, hateful? Why would motivate that child to want to hurt others? I wasn't sure. It didn't make sense to me. And what is the future of our society, of this world, if we allow children to grow up into these types of violent, angry, hateful realities? I think these are very important questions, and for me to give you any kind of comprehensive, complete answer, I would be misrepresenting. I will try to share a little bit from the psychosocial perspective. First of all, what we know about the cognitions of anger is that children who grow up in these types of environments, their brains, their cognition actually get programmed to think in hateful ways. They think in terms of threat. Aggression is normative for them. That's the way to do it. Another way, beyond just their thought processes, is post-traumatic stress. These children get traumatized. They have functional problems, social problems. They have stereotypical perceptions of the other. They become hateful, and clinical symptomatology has something to do with it. In other words, these kids get trapped in the cycle of violence, trauma, and aggression. They get stuck in it. They hurt others. These people, in turn, hurt others, and the cycle perpetuates itself. Sadly, we're seeing it again in Israel. I want to emphasize, though, that I'm not here to talk about an Israeli problem, American, European problem, any type of that. I'm here to talk about a human phenomena. This happens across humanity, and it shows up every single time where we see conflict in the world. I think the next statement I care about the most is I believe that our task as caring human beings is to do something about it and allow these children freedom from that cycle of violence, freedom from being stuck in that vicious cycle, and really the opportunity to initiate another kind of cycle, a cycle of care, a cycle of compassion. And the next slide, I will share about one way that we think that might be possible. I think that showing you one of the biggest problems of humanity and then telling you on the next slide I got the solution, that's somewhere between silly and arrogant. So I'm not going to say that, of course, but I will say that in the past years, we've been working on trying to create a platform that seems to have a lot of data behind it that would make, we believe, a positive, meaningful difference with these types of realities. So let me show you what that might look like. So it starts with this program, Erase Stress. It's developed by this cool dude in the mustard shirt right over there, who's humble. And let me tell you a little bit about what that program does. So Erase Stress is, in essence, it's a teacher-mediated program. So it uses the train-the-trainers model. It's very scalable. It's very cheap to implement because you train people who, in turn, can train teachers that work with whole classrooms. And that program was shown to reduce depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, somatic complaints related to stress. And again, like Dr. Doty mentioned before, it's been implemented in 12 different cultures: Israel, Palestine, China, India, Indonesia, Thailand, just to mention a few. Ronnie's going to Tanzania in a couple of days, right as this ends, to do more of this kind of work. Lots of peer-reviewed publications behind this work. So we know that reducing stress is feasible using that kind of model. Now we want to augment what we're doing, in essence. So Erase Stress Prosocial. What does that do? The idea is to take this existing platform, enhance and enrich it by using the modalities that we know already works, integrating stress reduction with increase of compassion. The first pilot that was implemented showed reductions, what Ronnie has done, reductions with Jewish and Arab kids in the south of Israel, were reducing both stress and prejudice and stereotypes. I think we know how much the Israelis and the Palestinians love each other. The capacity to actually reduce stereotypical perceptions of both sides, that's no joke. We think that if that can happen, probably we'll be able to replicate that and do that in other parts of the world. What's happening right now is Erase Stress Prosocial has begun by a mixture of stress reduction with prejudice reduction. The idea is to augment the program so that we add more skills training. We have more elements that we will be adding, including empathy training, compassion training, helping children connect with their core values, their core essence, which I believe is goodness. So that's kind of where we're going. The last piece here, I know that some of you will come to a workshop tomorrow and some of you will not. Our goal is to share as many applied skills and gifts as we possibly can. So there are handouts here summarizing everything that I just said in one page. And at the bottom of the handout, you'll find two things. One is a longer presentation that gives you more details. You can just click on it. It's on the CCARE website if you want to learn a little bit more about what we're doing. The other thing is another link. If you Google the words Erase Stress, Prosocial, Civic Virtue, you'll find it online as well, or just pick up a handout. And that link is a project we did with 30 students a couple of years ago in Phil Zimbardo's class. And these students, these doctoral students in the PGSP Stanford program, they reviewed multiple domains of prosocial engagement, so prosocial behavior, prejudice reduction, increasing responsibility and accountability, and so forth. And really the idea is that we have multiple lit reviews on each domain of prosocial engagement that we can think of, and then these people, with our guidance, created interventions for multiple age groups. So if you go to that document, you'll find suggested skills and exercises that you can potentially draw upon working with kids between ages 8 years old and 17 years old. Again, this is a work in progress working with the students, but it's a huge resource if you feel like checking out some of this stuff, becoming inspired by it, trying it out, and we will be excited to update you as our work continues. And again, for me to be here is a huge honor, so I want to just express my gratitude and appreciation for this opportunity. Thank you.